friend Steve Patafie from Vilore Foods is back in the studio with us. Always good to see you, sir.
You too.
Yeah,
Thanks.
it's been a while. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Hey, before we get started, we got a lot of stuff we want to cover today for small and medium-sized Walmart suppliers, but let's talk about Vilore Foods. What are some of the great products in Walmart stores that we can see from the Vilore label?
Yeah, sure. So at Vilore Foods, we have a variety of different brands. All our brands index relatively high with the Hispanic consumer. Talking about Walmart specifically, we have about 75 SKUs, national distribution, 4,000 stores, all center store. The two big brands that you would see that have a pretty good presence in Walmart is La Costeña. So La Costeña is the #1 jalapeno, comes out of Mexico. And you can find La Costeña jalapenos, beans, chipotles, moles, and other packaged Mexican food over in the Hispanic aisle. And then also Jumex. So Jumex is the #1 nectar in Mexico. Jumex you actually isn't in the Hispanic aisle at Walmart. Walmart has it over in the juice aisle. So.
All right. Well, I was excited to have you on the show today because you and I got to talking a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about some of the new trends in food and some of the new shoppers and things that you're seeing. What are some of the things that we need to be aware of, especially food suppliers, as we jump into the new decade?
Absolutely. So related to food. So at Vilore Foods, we spend a lot of time talking about America's desire for Mexican food and flavor, and that really rolls into what's going on with global flavors and global brands as a category. So we saw a study not too long ago where global flavors is supposed to increase a little more than 4% over the next couple of years. And the study talked about a variety of different factors and why that's going to happen. And one of the things that I personally found interesting was it talked about that millennial group that we've talked about for years now, right? And their love for travel, right? And especially international travel and how they embrace international travel a lot more than, the previous generations. So what this study talked about was, how people travel and they vacation, they have all these great experiences. And then when they come home, they want to replicate a lot of these experiences.
Sure.
And some of the easiest ways to replicate these experiences is just through food.
So on that note, with the global travel and the global experiences, this is an interesting meeting with your Walmart supplier, with the Walmart supplier to the Walmart buyer, because now you have to kind of go in and build a case for expanding your assortment because those flavors may not be, here in Bentonville, Arkansas, or, I traveled somewhere and I want to experience that. So how do you build that case to convince your buyer, hey, this is going to be okay?
Well, one, you wouldn't think so, right, that they'd be in Bentonville, Arkansas. But here's my opinion. So in my opinion, I think there's a lot of retailers now, not just Walmart, but a lot, that are doing everything that they can to try to connect with their ethnic consumer and just their inquisitive shopper, right? So I think if you're a supplier and you have a solution that'll help these retailers connect, you need to share it. So, and if I can, I'll just share some personal stories.
Absolutely.
So over the past 10 months, my family, we've hosted two different international students. So one was a 19-year-old young man from El Salvador. We had him for about 3 months. And then the past 7 months, we've hosted a 16-year-old exchange student from Spain.
Oh, wow.
And and it's been a lot of fun. And one of the things that's been fun is, with both of them, we've had the experience where we've walk through a grocery store and they'll stop in their tracks and they'll run over and they'll grab an item off the shelf and they'll come back and say, I did not know that you guys sold this in the USA. I did not know I could find this here. And, and then they'll tell a story, right? And there's just such a deep connection with this story. They're so passionate. And it might be, these are the cookies that my mother would have for me when I got home from school, or this is the soda pop that my mother wouldn't buy, but I could have it every time I was at my friend's house. And, little things like that. And you could just see how passionate they were. And, of course, inevitably these items made it into the cart. We took them home, and then they made everybody under our roof try it, and would tell the story again and again. And you could just see how passionate they were. And I can relate, from a personal level. So personally, I was not born in this country. I was born in Ottawa, Ontario. Yeah. Grew up in Eastern Canada and spent time in Calgary, Alberta before finally, coming down to the U.S. About 20 years ago. And there's been times where I've walked through, local Walmarts here in Northwest Arkansas, and, I'll be walking past the chip aisle and I'll see all-dressed potato chips, which you do not see a lot of all-dressed potato chips outside of Canada, or or poutine bites in the frozen aisle, or even just branded good Canadian brands over in the beverage aisle. And they make it in my cart and I take them home because there is that, connection and everything else with it. And when it comes to food, it's, an individual that I work with, he laughs and says, I think the happiest I've ever seen you was when we were at a festival and you saw a food truck that served poutine and beaver tails. And
beaver tails. Okay. Explain to naive people like me, what are beaver tails?
It's just fried dough with some powdered sugar, and it's just Canada.
Okay.
So every bite tastes
Sounds
like Canada. So no, they're amazing. And to me, you know what? It's my childhood, and it's what I remember. I remember skating out on the frozen lake in Ottawa and grabbing a hot beaver tail. And yeah, so to me, there is that deep connection, and I can relate. So I think if you're a supplier out there that can help a retailer really connect on such a deep level with their consumers and with their shoppers, you need to share that story. So.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, especially for the small to medium Walmart suppliers who want to make that connection and really understand who their core customer is. What are some of the things that are kind of the best practices for Vilore, or things that you've done to really understand your customer, to be able to connect with them and then go back and make that case for the Walmart buyer?
Yeah, sure. So at Vilore, we do spend a lot of time trying to understand our customer and what it is that they want today, but also, of course, what it is that they're going to want tomorrow. And we go out and have real conversations, and we talk to them, and we look at who's putting our product in their basket, and of course ask the questions why, and try to get to know at a deeper level. And with that being said, we listen to everything that they say, but we also know that actions sometimes speak louder than words.
Sure.
And to give an example, when we look at like the core consumer that buys La Costeña and our Humex items, one of the things that we kind of hear over and over again is, hey, you know what? Going to the shopping store, touching items, and putting them in my basket, it's important to me. And when we ask why, they talk about how when they were younger, they would put on their nicest clothes, the entire family, they'd go with all their siblings and their parents and grandparents, and the entire family would go to the grocery store together, and it was an event, and they would spend 2 hours at the grocery store. And now that they're older, they want to replicate those experiences, and they want to take their kids and their grandkids and do the same thing. And so we listen to that, and we look, and we realize they do have those experiences. However, those experiences maybe are only happening 2 or 3 times a year in some cases, right? And so then we'll start to ask more questions and talk, and we'll realize, the individual that's telling us this, maybe they're not the primary shopper in their household, right? So it might be the spouse or even somebody else. And the spouse might be leaning and taking advantage of some of the new technology and some of the other avenues that are out there nowadays, and using OGP in some of these things. So we'll look at all that, and we'll kind of take a holistic approach, and we'll start asking a lot of questions, both internally and with our customers. And, for that particular example, some of the questions that we would ask, or we would go and we would say, hey, we know that the in-store shopping experience is important to our customer, and we know it because they tell us, and it's part of their heritage, and they're passionate about it, right? So we'll ask retailers, and we'll just say, hey, what can we do to help you with the in-store shopping experience? Because it is important to our customer. At the same time, like I said, actions sometimes speak louder than words.
Sure.
So we'll look at the other side and say, we can't ignore technology and really the shift that's going on and what's going on there. So we'll also ask a lot of those same questions and say, how can we get involved and make sure that we're covering all bases when it comes to that side of things?
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and follow us online.